When we started this podcast, it seemed like we had to figure it all out on our own. Scripts, setup, filming schedule, logos. It was super overwhelming, and every day seemed to introduce a new decision that needed an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Allbirds and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/ranks. Go to shopify.com/ranks. That's shopify.com/ranks.
On Fox One, now you can stream your favorite live sports, so you can be there live for the biggest moments. Touchdown! And catch history in the making.
Gibby, make three!
Fox One, we live for live. Streaming now.
This episode is brought to you by Disney+, Hulu, and ESPN. Now you can get all of ESPN in the new ESPN app, along with Disney+ and Hulu with a limited-time offer. The biggest sports, movies, and shows in one bundle, all for just $29.99 a month for 12 months. Visit Disney+ Hulu ESPNBundle.com for details. Ad-supported plan auto-renews at regular price, currently $35.99 per month unless canceled. Ends January 5th, 2026. Terms apply.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite transatlantic football podcast. My name's Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today, live from London and all the way across the water, early doors in San Diego. It's Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Been a good start to the Premier League season, isn't it? That's been lively, so that's been fun. It's that little period where I'm just full. My brain is at full capacity because the football started as well, and I've still got all the transfer stuff. So it's like the crossover period. So yeah, I'm just maxed out. But
this is your Venn diagram of doom.
God, I hate Venn diagrams. But yeah, absolutely is. Look, it could be worse. It could be West Ham. So I wouldn't want to be West Ham right now. So that's good. I'm not them.
No, you're not. And today we're going to be talking about the deals left to do in this window. There is under a week of the transfer window left, and there is still a fair amount of business that feels like it needs to be done. Now, some of that is contingent on other deals happening, etc., etc. And we talk about the domino effect quite a lot on the podcast, right? Like, can clubs start to do their business until the big deals at the top are completed, when those kind of monies dry up and everyone's looking at it and saying, okay, some players might be available that we didn't think were available at the start of the window. It's what makes deadline day and those kind of days rolling up to it so much fun, I think, for lots of teams. But there's a lot still to happen at the top of the table and some of the biggest clubs. We're going to run through the Premier League today and have a look at what deals might need to be done, what have to be done, what needs to stay, etc., across the course of it. So there's a lot to get through, and I'm going to sort of hand the plate to you to set it all out.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Tottenham because it's just that there's just so much to talk about, quite frankly. A good start to the season. Thomas Frank is a boss. He's a boss. He's figuring out different game plans for any occasion, and they seem to be working. Let's hope that he's not such a good manager that Daniel Levy's like, oh, he's fine with what he's got. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Tottenham are in the market right now, scrambling around almost quite literally at the moment for new players. They've obviously had big disappointments with Morgan Gibbs-White and Eberechi Eze, and that disappointment might not be done yet. I've been a bit cautious around my reporting of their interest in Piero and Hincapié in the last week, because I knew it was live, but I also knew that they've had almost a hesitancy about it, because it almost felt like a lack of belief that they could actually get the deal done. And it also felt like they didn't want anybody else to know that they were doing it, because if they did, then Chelsea or somebody else might come in, and that's kind of what happened with Arsenal. So Tottenham have been touching base over this Bayer Leverkusen deal, and they were willing to negotiate closely to the £52 million release terms, but they've never been wholly convinced that the player actually wanted to join them. And then in the past few days, there's been more and more possibility that Arsenal get involved in the pursuit. And then that's happened in the last 24 hours coming to recording this podcast. And Arsenal not actually even looking to give Bayer Leverkusen, as I understand it, as good a deal as Tottenham would have been willing to do. But the player clearly quite fancies this one. I'm not sure exactly what it is about Arsenal beyond the fact that they're just at a higher level right now, because I know that he was interested in Tottenham to some degree and felt that he could break into that team, he'd get enough game time. Maybe the Eze situation got into his head and he was like, hang on, if Eze did that, maybe I should do that. But for Tottenham, it's kind of a nightmare that Arsenal have come calling for a player that they kind of want to say don't really need. Do they need Hincapié? I don't know. But obviously part of this would also be Kivior going out the door. At the moment that hasn't happened. He's linked with FC Porto. As we sit here right now, that deal hasn't actually happened. And I think that does need to happen for the Hincapié one to go through. So Tottenham and Arsenal are entwined again over a transfer. And Tottenham must fear the worst, because I know that they've been putting out the feelers on other deals now and have not really, in the last day, progressed this one. So that's pretty bad news for Tottenham, because he would have been a good signing, I think. In terms of a profile, I think Hincapié was a really good fit for the club and also for the setup and where they wanted to go with what Thomas Frank's trying to build out. So that'll be a disappointment if they don't get a second chance to go for him. And it's even worse, obviously, if he ends up at Arsenal. But the other area, obviously, is the attack and the creative players that are supposed to be signing. Savinho's definitely interested. I'm sure you saw the pictures he's been putting on Instagram and stuff. And there's the one with his posted a picture of a pool table and there's like a suitcase behind it. Looks ready to go. And like he's literally packed his bags, wants to leave Man City. Talks did go on over the weekend, as I'd reported in the build-up to the game, between Man City and Tottenham, and they managed to get some sort of breakthrough. It's going to cost a lot of money to get Savinho. I think it might even end up at too much money, personally, if they end up signing him. And I'm not convinced on this one. I'm not convinced on what I've seen of Savinho in the Premier League so far, and I don't know exactly that I see him fitting at Tottenham, but they have to deliver Thomas Frank some players. And obviously they've tried to get Nico Pass and they haven't managed to do that one. So that's been a disappointment. There's other doors that they've been knocking down, and they're continuing to now seek other alternatives, as I understand it. Like even Lucas Paqueta is being talked about in the corridors of power at Hotspur Way. Shall we go for him? Shall we give it a go? I can't imagine that West Ham would do it again. I can't imagine after letting Kudus go to Tottenham that they would let Paqueta go as well. I mean, we'll talk about them in a bit, but blimey, that would be far-fetched. But yeah, Tottenham, mate, they're going to do some business. There's no doubt about that. But it is becoming, let's say, chaotic behind the scenes, because as has been the case for most of this transfer window, it's not going to plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously difficult right now, and there's a lot of ire being thrown the way of Daniel Levy, which I think is understandable from a Tottenham fan perspective. Like, it does feel like at the moment it's like, oh, well, we tried. and those things aren't going through it. And obviously that's caused real consternation in the fan base at a time where after 2 wins from 2, one of them away at Manchester City, and I know that Tottenham have that hold and that Thomas Frank has had success there as well in the past, but it still felt like a very, very impressive performance in terms of what they put together the weekend. And you think that Spurs fans would be on cloud 9 with the start that they've had under Thomas Frank. But instead, there's just this real visceral frustration. And obviously, the Eze thing hurts. Like 100%, I completely get it. And watching him then, stroll around talking about how this was a lifelong dream is going to go even further to twist that knife that's been dug into them. But, things like this do happen. And I think that that's obviously, considering where Spurs are and considering where Arsenal are and where they finished in the league in the last couple of seasons. And yes, Spurs fans will point correctly to the fact that they've won a trophy in that period. And, they're in the Champions League because they've won a trophy. But equally, you can see why there's that attraction to try and push Arsenal over the line as well. So look, I can understand the ire from the Spurs fans. The Savinho one I think is really interesting because I think he's an exceptional football player who didn't necessarily fit at all times last year. He wasn't brilliant at City last year, but then again, who was? If you kind of look at it and you look at the performances across the course of the season, I don't think anyone would stand up and be like, yeah, you were absolutely unbelievable across all of last year. And that is the difficult bit about it. I think he's a wonderful runner of the ball. I think the way that he carries the ball towards players and takes people on makes him very unique. I think his expected assists last year were far, far higher than what he actually put out in terms of numbers. And you'd expect that to kind of rectify itself over the course of a longer period of time. I think he'd be a really, really fun signing for Spurs. But if City are demanding sort of close to 70 million, then maybe you do look elsewhere. And look, the Magnus Agliuche deal from Monaco is one that intrigues me as well. He's someone that is a kind of star in the making, it feels. And it'll be a big blow for Monaco if they were going to lose him. But the fact that Spurs are looking at these kind of targets, I think is probably a good thing. Nketiah would be a really nice fit. Being able to cover that left back area, being able to cover left centre back, give them those rotation pieces, I think really does help, especially when you're watching them kind of do it at the moment and playing makeshift left backs in the absence of Destiny Udogie. It feels like the right kind of fit, and I think he would get more game time at Spurs than he was going to get at Arsenal. But obviously, they don't want to be caught up in the crossfire of looking like they've been gazumped again. I saw someone last week on social media talking about Tottenham as the Newcastle United of the South, and whilst that did make me laugh, it's not a great place for a club to be. So I can understand their hesitancy with that one.
Yeah, totally. Obviously, it doesn't help that they've got Arsenal down the road making waves. It was interesting on Arsenal that I wrote about them last week, and it was kind of like a preview of what would happen in the final days of the window for them, and how it was poised in that moment, because it was like it felt at the time. This was like the day before the Kai Havertz injury. It was like it feels like they're letting Eze slip by. They haven't pounced. Rodrigo is potentially still available, and they've talked about him for the entire summer, but not actually done anything about it. Do they do one of those? Do they even try and do both of those? Or do they just leave it, and do they just go for a defender that kind of covers some bases? And in that respect, it was just like, is it a squad filler at the back that ends up coming in? And yet here we are a week later, they've got Eze through the door. Obviously, partly because of that injury to Havertz, partly because he's phoned him begging to come. But they're also now looking not at just a defender to fill out the squad, one of the best defenders in Europe, in Nketiah. Like, Arsenal's ambition in this transfer window has been of a top level. And there can be no questions about that win now mentality that we've talked about all summer, and that they're going to try and just get this over the line. I've tipped them to win the league. They're top of the league after 2 games. People seem unconvinced about the manner in which they've got there. Anyone who listens to us on Patreon will know that I think that that's nonsense. 2 games into the season, you're not playing your peak football for the campaign. You're just getting the points on board. If you're not on Patreon, by the way, get yourselves on there. Happy new season. Come and support Ranks FC. We've got loads of new shows going on over there. Almost a pod a day at the moment. So come on over.
Busy. Real busy.
Yeah, me and Young Jackson have got loads of stuff coming for you this season. So yeah, come over to Patreon. But yeah, beyond that, going for Nketiah just shows that, oh my God, I believe this would be an unbelievable statement to get this done as well. And also, obviously, it gives you more chance of being able to compete domestically and also in the Champions League. And on the back of them losing Odegaard and Saka in that first game of the season, for the first time, Arsenal fans, obviously you're concerned because it's Saka and Odegaard that have gone down, but you're not mortified because you've just seen Eze introduced on the pitch before the game and you can see him clapping up in the stands when you're scoring goals. A totally different feel to the Arsenal right now, and a good feel. I'm sticking by that prediction, mate. I'm sticking by him as my tip to win the league this season. And if Nketiah comes in as well, cemented.
Do you think that will be the last bit of business they do from an incoming
I don't
perspective?
think they can do any more. They've spent so much money.
If they were to go and buy Nketiah, that would take them about 300 million net spend in this transfer window. And I suppose my flip side was, in a question that doesn't necessarily apply to Spurs in the same way, what about the Arsenal outgoings? Because obviously we've seen players leave. Nuno Tavares made his loan permanent at Lazio for about £6.5 million. Marquinhos went back to Brazil, to Cruzeiro for £2.5 million. There's a load of loans and kind of free transfers that have departed the club, but none of them really kind of huge players last year. You know, aside from, you'd look at that and say, well, maybe Tomiyasu, perhaps, Partey, the ones that the big names that have departed. But there's still players on the books here that Arsenal are kind of looking at and saying they probably should go. And for all their good work in the transfer window, one of the things that Arsenal have been quite bad at is selling. Their record sale is obviously Emil Smith-Rowe to Fulham, which was £32.5 million. It's not been the kind of output that you would expect from a club that's having this much kind of churn and turnover and change. So there's still players within this squad that I think you're looking at and going, well, there's no place for you anymore. And Alexander Zinchenko, there's probably not a place for Reece Nelson. And I know there's been kind of interest in those for Reece Nelson after the loan spell last year, but Arsenal seems to be holding out for fees that no one seems willing to pay. And that's a big part of all of this.
I mean, I'd argue that £32.5 million for Emil Smith-Rowe in hindsight is an incredible deal for them.
Yeah, they got a good fee out of that. But but generally, the fact that that's their record sale is kind of nuts, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to consider that this is a different era. Andrea Berta's done amazing work so far, and there's going to be a late flurry of exits. I don't have too much information specifically on the how-abouts of that, but obviously, like the players that you mentioned need to leave. Like there's no space for them in that squad, and they will move them on. Whether they get good value in the market for them, I mean, you could be bang on again, like that. They go on cheap or they go on another loan deal, which is of no advantage really to Arsenal. But I think it's interesting that it shows that the club are so focused on the players that are here, that do matter, that they're not having to worry so much about the fringe players and the management of that, because they're like, we can't worry about that right now. All we can do is worry about our strongest 11 and then the kind of 10 that back them up, because that's what wins us titles this season. And Arteta's been pretty ruthless anyways. I think he's even if he likes a player, he'll quickly cut them if he's kind of told he has to or he feels he has to. And I think that Arsenal are now shaping up well. What's interesting is that, to move on to another club, Man City feel under pressure by what Arsenal have actually done in this transfer window. They've been pushed to consider signings that they didn't really want to have to make in these final days of the transfer window because of what Arsenal have done and because of what Liverpool have done so far. So obviously there's a lot of talk around Donnarumma, and rightly so, because James Trafford never came into the club being told you're our number one. Like the idea was always that James Trafford was supposed to be competing to be the number one. Whether that was Edison, whether that was Ortega, or whether that was somebody else that was to come in if those two were going to depart. And now, as we sit here, there's all sorts of conflicting information I've noticed this morning around for what Fabrizio's reported on it's agreed and blah, 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 and personal terms are done. And then there's some other reports saying, no, it's not. But clearly Man City are trying to sign Donnarumma, which is a very, very significant transfer. But not only that, if they do lose Savinho, which they don't really want to do, but if they do lose him, then they're going to try and level up from that and go for somebody like Rodrigo, for example. And so if Man City in the final days ended up signing Donnarumma and Rodrigo, I think that is partly because of what they've seen Arsenal do this summer. What Man City did at the beginning of this summer was important in terms of the depth that they added. But I get the feeling that they don't think they've leveled up well enough. I spoke to somebody after their Tottenham game at the weekend, and he said they're worried that this game is not just a one-off. Like, these are the sorts of inconsistencies that were there all of last season, and thrashing Wolves and then losing to Tottenham at home is just literally in keeping with what we've seen for the last year. And this was exactly what they wanted to avoid at the start of this season. And the changes that they've made haven't changed the story or the narrative of that. So obviously they've brought in some decent players, and Reinders is going to be a key one. But have they done enough? I don't usually anticipate Man City going for a panic buy, but I wonder if anyone does, Jack. If anyone's to panic on that last couple of days, I reckon it might be Man City and just going big on someone.
Yeah, I mean, I have my concerns with the Donnarumma move. Now, I know there was obviously frustration with James Trafford at the weekend, and he had a really bad game, right? But that can happen. That can happen to anyone, especially, coming back in, home game, returning to the place you've wanted to play for ages. The jitters can get the better of you, and it did look a little bit like that. But my big concern with it was their inability to play the outball. And this is obviously what leads to the second goal. And there was a really brilliant bit on Sky on Monday Night Football where they were showing this and basically saying that, last season against Chelsea, there was the same kind of press taking place. But actually what they did was they went long, and Ederson picked out Haaland and he ran through clean on goal and chipped the keeper, and they scored. And you're like, wow, okay. So they won that game 3-1. And the difference for me is that ability to play it out, and with such accuracy that's been such a hallmark of Ederson's game. And look, for so many years, at City, we've seen Ederson be the guy because he had both the shot-stopping ability and the ability to play out with his feet. Now, we saw a little bit of maybe age catching up with him a tad at the end of last season. There were some shots he should have stopped that he didn't. But I think that ability to play out, and especially with City becoming a bit more direct, I wonder if the bit that they really need is that ability to bypass the press, to go long. And I'm just concerned that that's not Gigi Donnarumma's game in the same kind of way. There have been multiple accidents over the last couple of years with PSG, with Donnarumma trying to play out in a certain way. I am a little bit concerned that I don't think it necessarily solves all the problems. Yeah, he's a brilliant shot stopper. Of course he is. We know that. But in terms of actually what they're trying to achieve and what they're looking for, I don't know. I'm not completely convinced by that deal. And look, maybe in May, I'll look very, very stupid when he's got the golden glove in a hand and Man City have won the league. But I don't know. I remain unconvinced that this is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he's still better than James Trafford. So
yeah, I agree. Although, Trafford comes in there and the kind of idea was sit him for a year, right? Let him learn from Ederson or Ortega or whoever it was, and that he has the kind of future of being the number one at some point.
It's just hard because of that mistake, man. Like it's just hard. Like, it was such a stupid error. I don't know why they feel the need to even put the goalkeeper in those situations. I understand, like, we've talked about the fact that the game is changing, particularly in the Premier League, and the tactics. And I think they need to just accept you don't need to be passing it from the edge of your 6-yard box into the middle of your 6-yard box, from your centre-back to your goalkeeper for no reason anymore. People aren't going to be doing that any longer. Maybe City think they can still do that and they'll be fine, but that's just cost them a game by doing it. Don't get me wrong, I've seen them pass out the back and I think it's been great. Like, when it works, it's amazing. And other people have copied it and it's been amazing. Those days are dead. Like, everybody knows how to combat it, especially if they spot a weakness, a fragility, if they suspect that goalkeeper doesn't actually know how to execute it, and they just get hunted down. It's a stupid goal to concede. And now I don't know if they can do it again anyway, because Trafford can't be put into that situation again because the other opponents are going to do exactly the same thing. You need a new goalkeeper. Like, already you need a new goalkeeper.
I have my concerns with that as an outlook, but Yeah, I think that there will be drastic change. I don't think that's going to go away. And whether that means that Ederson goes back in and they keep him or Donnarumma comes through the door, it'll be one or the other. But yeah, I do feel a bit for James Trafford. One error and you're done. You know, Pep always said, there's that famous quote from Victor Valdez, right? When Pep was like, I want you to play out from the back. And if we concede, it's on me. It's not on you. You know, that's the big thing. And suddenly, you know, it's like, oh, one error and out the door you go, look, there was more than one thing. Like James Trafford probably should have been sent off. Like there was different things happening here. But, you know, if you're asking your keepers to make risky decisions, then you're assuming that risk as a manager. And I think that to immediately sort of replace him would suggest that the Pep has kind of lost his nerve a little bit with that one, which is a different thing. So we will see. Right, we'll take a little break there. When we come back, we'll be discussing some of the clubs with perhaps the most to do. Stick with us here on Ranks FC. When we started this podcast, it seemed like we had to figure it all out on our own. Scripts, setup, filming schedule, logos. It was super overwhelming, and every day seemed to introduce a new decision that needed an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Allbirds and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/ranks. Go to shopify.com/ranks. That's shopify.com/ranks.
If you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or personal loans, help is here. More and more Americans turn to credit cards to get by. National Debt Relief is helping qualified clients reduce what they owe. For many, continuing to struggle making minimum monthly payments could take years to pay off. National Debt Relief has already helped over 550,000 Americans reduce their debt by negotiating directly with their creditors. When you call, you'll be amazed at how much you can save and how quickly you can become debt-free. If you want off the debt treadmill, visit nationaldebtrelief.com today. You don't need to declare bankruptcy, and you may qualify for significant debt relief. To find out what savings you may qualify for, simply visit nationaldebtrelief.com. That's nationaldebtrelief.com.
I'm not switching my team to some fancy work platform that somehow knows exactly how we work. And its AI features are literally saving us hours every day. We're big fans. And just like that, teams all around the world are falling for Monday.com. With intuitive design, seamless AI capabilities, and custom workflows, it's the work platform your team will instantly click with. Head to Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Welcome back to Ranks AFC, where we're talking the last days of the transfer window and the business that still needs to be achieved by clubs in the Premier League. And we've got a triple United section coming up for you now. Manchester United, Newcastle United, West Ham United. Three teams who feel like they need to have incredibly active ends to this transfer window. Dean, over to you.
Yeah, the poor old Uniteds. Let's go through them, shall we? As it stands right now, Newcastle United are 15th in the table, Man United are 16th in the table, and West Ham are 20th in the table. Not great, is it? Not great. Let's start with Newcastle United, because they've got to get going fast, and they're obviously one of the big stories of this transfer window anyway, because of the amount of failures that they've had in terms of trying to get people over the line. It's obviously been a weird one in the fact that they've been switching in terms of their main targets, but one that's persisted to be there has been Johan Visser. That one's still not done and still some way apart in terms of valuation. Newcastle still want to sign him, but they're not paying £60 million for him. He's not worth £60 million, and they can't cave in on that one. They've obviously bid for Strand Larsen at the start of the week, and they're still interested in that one. Wolves don't want him to go. They're willing to offer new contract terms to him to stay at Wolves. The player definitely is quite interested in it. So there's some potential around that one being reignited. Obviously, Nicholas Jackson is somebody that they've been looking at. Brentford are talking about Johan Visser being £60 million. Well, I think you could get Nicholas Jackson at £60 million. And if it's one or the other, then you're going to go for Nicholas Jackson. And Ollie Watkins, his name keeps cropping up. Probably not going to leave Aston Villa at this point. There'd probably be uproar if he did leave Aston Villa at this point. But ultimately, they need to make something happen because obviously this Isak situation is bubbling in the background. It seems like they've had a bit of a different stance on Isak since the weekend. It'd all been quite aggressive and confrontational between all parties last week. And then it felt like Newcastle just tried to ease off a little bit at the weekend to try and make Isak feel like he was still welcome. And Eddie Howe, I think, has tried to mediate a bit. And the way that he spoke about it was trying, I think, to show an openness to bringing Isak back into the fold. Isak continues to insist that he doesn't want to play for Newcastle again. They're selling T-shirts outside the stadium, calling him a rat. The fans are like chanting all sorts of things about him. They don't. It's very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible to come back from here because nothing's impossible in football, but it'd be very difficult and he doesn't want to be there. So, yeah, Newcastle will have to do something. They're actually obviously they're playing quite well, to be honest. Like I thought the first game of the season, they were unlucky not to beat Aston Villa. Probably should have done. And then obviously they've had the game on Monday night against Liverpool, potentially one of the best games we'll see all season, forcing themselves back from 2-0 down with 10 men to almost win the game, but obviously inevitably lose the game. And that's why they sit there right now in 15th place in the table. And even worse, Anthony Gordon got the red card, and he's the guy that's been filling in that spot in the middle to try and be their goal getter. So they desperately need a striker now. So not good, but something will happen. Eventually, they're going to make that breakthrough, and they want to sign 2 forwards. It says that they still need 2 because Callum Wilson left, and Isak, we're still assuming, is going to leave. And so they want 2. They have to get at least 1. So that's where we are with Newcastle right now.
Do you think he will leave? Like, I have no information on this. I'm not sitting here from your position as someone who has, the same amount of contacts in the industry. But I'd kind of be stunned if he was wearing a Liverpool shirt by the end of this transfer window. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that he won't go anywhere or that everything is completely closed. But from where I'm standing, I just cannot see it. I cannot see a world where at the end of this window, Alexander Isak is standing at Anfield with a red shirt in his hands, considering everything that's gone down. And look, there's loads of different avenues to that. There's the whole relationship between Eddie Howe and Richard Hughes and the Liverpool backroom staff. The fact that they've just had a very bad-tempered game against each other probably hasn't helped things. The last-minute winner probably doesn't help things in that regard. I saw, obviously, the news that the Jamie Rubin and a contingent from the PIF went to visit him at his house to see him. Like, I just don't really envision a world where that's going to happen this window. That doesn't mean that he doesn't sign in January. You remember, go back to the Philip Coutinho situation, right? That at that point, Liverpool we will not sell him. They sold him in January, fine, but they said they wouldn't sell him in that window, and they didn't sell him in that window. Now, I think you're probably right in that the bridges feel a bit too burned to be mended, but I just don't know if Liverpool are going to stump up 150 odd million, which Newcastle are saying they're going to demand for a player at this point.
They'll take less than that. Why are Newcastle trying to sign so many forwards if they're not letting Isak go? That's. At
the moment, they haven't got any of those forwards through the door, being the key element.
But they're going for them at the same time. They're going for Visser and one of the others. So why would they be doing that if they weren't? The transfer in opens the door for Isak to go. If that transfer in doesn't come, then maybe he doesn't go because they're stuck. But ultimately, Isak said he's not going to play for them anyway. So I don't know. Liverpool still want him. Liverpool still intend to bid this week. I think it'll be £130 million. I don't think it'll be £150 million. But I don't know. Like nobody knows what's going to happen here. It is a prediction at the moment, but I can't imagine that after Isak has pushed it this far, that he doesn't get backed up by at least one more bid from Liverpool in the coming days to at least test the water there.
Yeah,
they want someone else in. They've even been linked with Rodrigo, because why not? No, because they still need. They're still one attacker short in their eyes of where they were.
Yeah,
in terms of numbers.
That's fine.
But they're obviously only going for Rodrigo as an alternate to Alex Isak. And so that one potentially could still open up. That'll be like a deadline day thing.
I do wonder if they, are a little bit reticent to bring in someone whose best position is on the left wing because it potentially blocks the path for Rio Ngamoha, who obviously is star of the headlines on the day that we're recording this. I mean, obviously Rodrigo can play multiple positions, which is a good thing, but I think it's very interesting to see what they do here. I'm not convinced. And also, I think the other thing here is that if I'm Newcastle, I'm doing this business before. We know that there's been a £110 million bid on the table right beforehand. It's been rejected, but if Liverpool have the capacity to do that, then they have the capacity probably to stretch a little bit further. If a club knows you've got 120 million through the door, go back to the Neymar deal, right? And then suddenly Barcelona getting bent over barrels left, right and centre for certain players and they're being overcharged. Get them on, get the players in, then make the sale. It just doesn't really make sense to me that, that it's all like, oh, well, if the right offer comes in, then we might get the money in, then we might make it, do it. Get the players in. And the fact that Newcastle are kind of glacial with their pace on all of this, I don't know, something just feels not right to me.
Interesting. I mean, look, ultimately, if Isak happens, it is the transfer of the summer. It's been already the narrative of the summer, despite the fact that nothing's actually happened because of all the commotion behind the scenes. Ultimately, it's funny, really, that clubs can just push someone out the door and nobody really cares. But as soon as a player spots an opportunity to progress himself,
yeah, I mean, look, there's two sides to every story, right? I take that point.
The curtains come down. Ultimately, Isak's had a really good season there, and he wants to make the most of that by going and join the Premier League champions. Has he gone about it perfectly? No, but I don't think we know the full story. And I think that both sides could have probably acted better. Not just in this moment, as I've talked about before, over the course of the last year, goes back to
contract, the whole shebang. I completely agree with that bit. I don't think Newcastle have covered themselves in glory. I don't think that Isak's covered himself in glory. To be honest, I think that the only person that's coming out of this with their reputation enhanced is potentially Eddie Howe, who seems to have dealt with it magnanimously and pretty magnificently, I think, in very difficult circumstances. So, he's probably the only winner. Let's flip over to one of the other Uniteds. Where do you want to go?
We'll go to West Ham, I think. Are they going down? They are at this rate.
Well, if it stays like this, yeah.
They are 20th in the table. They've had an abysmal start. They've conceded 8 goals in 2 games.
The worst start in Premier League history, I read the other day. No one has ever had a start as bad as this in terms of conceding that many goals and having 0 points. Not great.
Yeah, and their performances are just as bad. It's not like they're unlucky. So Graham Potter's under pressure. There's no doubt about that. We spoke about that on Patreon this week. And then West Ham's clearly have an issue in the centre of their midfield that they are now frantically / desperately trying to fix. Even though it's really kind of too late to get the kind of players in that are likely to make enough of a significant difference. Now, in the hour before coming on to record this, there was a story that started to break that they are signing Magassa from
Against Monaco.
Monaco.
I quite like this. Like, I do think that he's a really good player. He hasn't played all that much football, but his kind of numbers look really good. Every time I've seen him play, which admittedly isn't loads because he hasn't played loads, he's been very, very good. He's got a lot of energy in the middle there. He's someone that makes a difference from a defensive perspective, but can pass the ball as well. He's a good breaker up of play. I think this is a gamble that feels like worth taking. And I think that that's an exciting thing from a West Ham perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know who else they sign. I spoke to someone at the start of the week who said they genuinely had about 20 midfielders they were looking at this week. I mean, you shouldn't really be in that situation in deadline week. You should probably have 3, not 20. And I don't think the guy was exaggerating.
At the moment, I don't think 20 midfielders could plug the gap. So, like,
I think they could play all 20 and they'd still lose 4-0.
Yeah, there's just no energy. There's no legs in the West Ham midfield, and that is just not a place you can be.
Yeah, one of the players that I've written about today on Team Talk is Palacios of Bayer Leverkusen, who they've been in contact with. I think, to be honest, they were speaking to Bayer Leverkusen about somebody else, and I think that Palacios came into the conversation as a potential opportunity, maybe initially on loan as well, so it might accommodate their lack of cash. So that's one just to look out for. I'd say I don't know if that one will advance, if that's the one that's primed, but I know that, you know, players like Hayden Hackney who have been linked, they're not likely to sign him because he's a Championship player, and West Ham, as good as Hackney might be, aren't going to sign players from the Championship at a time when it already looks like they're heading down to the Championship. They need to make sure that they've got somebody in the centre of the park that's better than that. And Hackney's, as far as I understand it, just considered a bit of a risk at the moment because of the mess that they find themselves in. So it's their own fault, not Hackney's fault. He may well get a move somewhere else. But the other side of this is that I get the impression that Lucas Paqueta could go before deadline day.
I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I'll be honest. I know there'll be West Ham fans that disagree with me, but I just don't see it. Like, you get moments of magic like you did on Friday night from Lucas Paqueta, but equally then he just sort of strolled around the pitch for the next 18 minutes, kind of trying to revel in that. And, you know, you're getting absolutely overwhelmed. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if they were to, I know they've been linked with Harvey Elliott. If West Ham were to replace Lucas Paqueta with Harvey Elliott right now, I don't think that's dreadful from a West Ham perspective. No. I think that's probably a move in the right direction, especially when you haven't got the engine room behind that is doing the running for your number 10. You need someone in there that's going to be able to make it stick. And I do think that would be a more suitable kind of player to fit into what West Ham need right now, because they look so desperate in the middle of the park. They are just being run through. I've used this before with other clubs, but it just feels so easy to get at West Ham. And I think that there's a level of this that just involves the lack of intensity that they just don't really have.
Yeah, I mean, what might be the worst thing in the world is if he goes to Tottenham, because they're one of the teams that genuinely are actually interested. There's been kind of little whispers about this. And today I spoke to someone who said, yeah, Tottenham have mentioned Paqueta in meetings this week.
I don't think West Ham can sell him to Tottenham.
I don't think they can do it. And even Tottenham know that. Tottenham are surprised they got Kudus in a way, because, you know, that it's not a well-trodden path to go from West Ham to Tottenham. It obviously left fans rattled because of the way it was played out on social media and the way that Kudus dealt with it himself. For one of their other best players to also join Tottenham in his transfer window would be a PR disaster, because that fan base will be rattled. Like, they will be fuming. Paqueta might not be the best version of himself at the moment, but if I was to go through the West Ham team at the moment, I'd say like their best players are probably the ball carriers. So you've got Diouf, Wan-Bissaka, Jarrod Bowen, who are the three you're really looking at who could create something of like, there's chance of consistency from them. But then you've got Paqueta, who's like the magic man, who's like the guy that has the ability, that is top level. And so to lose him, it's just brings down the standard again another notch. And would West Ham have if they could get Harvey Elliott through the door first, then maybe. But the chances are, if they really are on a sell to buy strategy at the moment, they'd have to get Paqueta out and then try to do it. And what if they didn't manage to do it? That would be way too risky. There's just so much going on there. I mean, usually I'd sit here and say, they'll be all right. I honestly don't know that they will be. It will depend on who becomes their next manager. It won't. Graham Potter's not going to remain as their manager. I can't believe it. And I've heard otherwise also. So who's the manager going to be? How did he go about turning this around? Is it tactically? Is it emotionally? What do they get from that? And also, how do they get the best out of the rest of these players? Like Fulkrug seemed to be in really good spirits in pre-season from what I was hearing. And now I'm hearing kind of the opposite on him. And if you haven't got your goal scorers happy, then you're not going to score goals. And ultimately, that's what we've seen from West Ham so far.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm going to look at it and be like, I'll be playing Freddie Potts and George Earthy in there and making sure that the youngsters get a go because it can't get any worse in the centre of the park than what it looks right now. So they're going to need some players in those central areas, I think, is the key. The two defensively minded midfielders and the number 10. It feels like West Ham need 3 or 4 and potentially, someone who's going to come in and make a difference in the final third, take some of that goal scoring burden off Jared Bowen, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, it feels like Bowen or bust for West Ham at the moment, and they really, really need to get on with things. So we'll see. But it doesn't look good from their perspective at the moment, which takes us on to the final Manchester United. And talking of teams where you can just run through the middle of midfield, it does feel like this is the team crying out. And we spent a lot of time on this on Monday's Postbox episode that, every single Man United fan pretty much on the Patreon writing in to be like, please, for the love of God, sign a midfielder. We need someone in the centre of the park. We are being absolutely obliterated in there. And to quote the Hives, I would just like to say, hate to say I told you so.
Yeah, you've been big on the fact that Man United should be prioritising a central midfielder. They were never gonna. They were always going to go after those attackers first, and they did it. They got the attackers they've signed are like,
it's absolutely baffling
good.
Squad planning is probably what I would say.
But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of the midfielder is the guy that makes the team tick, and they obviously had a temptation to go and do it because of the Baleba approach. So it's not like this is not on their radar. It clearly is. But what's it going to lead to? That's the big concern. Like, where do they actually go from here? Who do they sign? I can't make it out like a good solution to this situation, because the targets that you would have expected to be there just aren't really there at the moment. If you think of the people that they want, obviously there was Baleba, who they felt was ideal. Didn't happen. Can't happen right now. Might revisit it. That's the only thing to consider here. Like, if they really want Baleba, then they can't go and sign a top-notch defensive-minded midfielder right now because they still want him. There's Adam Wharton at Palace, who they like, but he's pretty much untouchable right now. Morten Hjulmand at Sporting is only available for his full release clause. And again, I think that part of the hesitation around triggering that is because they still want Baleba down the line. And there's been links with players like Angelo Stiller. I don't think that that's for the same role. I don't think he's the same.
No, he's not. I mean, look,
that's not the same.
That would be a very strange move for United. Look, I think Stiller's excellent, right? And I think that actually Real Madrid have made a really strange decision not signing him in terms of getting someone in who can kind of dictate from the base. But a deep-lying playmaker is kind of what Amorim seems to want Bruno to be. Now, whether that's achievable or not, totally different question, right? But it seems to be that he's playing him in that deeper role, and that's what's going to stick for this season. We heard the comments about Kobbie Mainoo and all of those things. So you're kind of looking at it going, okay, well, how does this all shake out? And if they're going to play Bruno in that deeper role to try and be the person that gets the most touches, gets the kind of central areas and dictates the way the United play, then there's no point signing a Stiller, because that doesn't make the sense in terms of what they need. They need someone who's going to be athletic enough to cover that ground, as well as having the ability to play out. And those players are unicorns, right? They're looking at a Baleba and a Wharton for reasons. And those reasons are there's not that many people that are so good on both sides of the ball. And I think that that's what United need here. And they're not going to get one of those on the cheap.
Yeah, exactly. And then in the meantime, there's huge issues over Bruno Fernandes and Kobbie Mainoo. Kind of baffling, again, that United are in this situation whereby they've got Ugarte, they've got Casemiro, they've got Bruno Fernandes, they've got Mainoo. On paper, that's 4 really good options, right? But on a pitch, doesn't seem to translate. Kobbie Mainoo, a big decision to make in the next few days as to whether he pushes for a transfer. He's clearly frustrated. 2 games into the season, hasn't had a minute on the pitch. And that's despite the fact that Bruno Fernandes has put 2 performances in that are no more than a 4 out of 10. Like, Bruno is so off form, and yet he's playing every single minute, and Mainoo's not getting a single minute. So what's the player supposed to read into that? What he's going to be thinking is that, like, well, there is no chance of me getting on this pitch. He's just signed these attacking midfielder guys to play up in the 10s. If they're not there, then he's either going to put Diallo in there or Bruno will be moved back up there. And then am I even getting a deeper role, or is he going to play Casemiro with Ugarte? And then there's still Mason Mount in the mix, who's always going to be used, it seems, because Amorim loves him.
Well, I mean, Mason Mount makes the most sense of all the decisions that have been made from a central perspective. Like, the reason he keeps playing in the 3 at the moment, and look, that might change when Šeško hits full speed, but like, he actually does drop in and he makes that midfield harder to work through. And look, we saw that even at the weekend. It was when he came off that United lost all control of any sort of aspect of that game against Fulham. Like, Mount makes sense further up because he drops into those areas and he makes a difference. But that doesn't fix the issues behind in their entirety. There needs to be some more combative natured midfielders in order to actually stop them being played through him. It's very obvious that Casemiro can't do 90 minutes every week. He was very good against Arsenal. And then suddenly, in the second game against Fulham, there's a drop off in terms of level. You need to keep him fresh in order that in the big games, he still has that part to play. And I do think that's a really interesting perspective, but it means that they are desperate for someone to come in. And that's not even getting to the goalkeeping situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, some of the clubs that we've talked about being desperate for signings, Tottenham, Newcastle, West Ham, they'll all be knocking Man United's door down for the chance to get Kobbie Mainoo in on a late loan deal or something, surely. So that will be interesting. Like, if Kobbie actually does become open to leaving here, which clearly he's starting to become, where does he go? Because he'll be wanting to go somewhere where he not only plays every week, but also has a bit of responsibility, and to become somebody that's considered part of the team. It's big time for him. He's at an age where he wants to kick on with his career and start to make a name for himself properly. It's all very well being a breakthrough star, but establishing yourself as a star is a very difficult thing too. And maybe at Tottenham or Newcastle or West Ham, Fulham have been mentioned. I'm not sure how much likelihood there is of it. There's loads of clubs, Everton, Villa, like all these teams. I think they could all benefit from signing like Kobbie Mainoo. So there'll definitely be avenues out there for him to explore in the next few days if he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, are there going to be any movements in terms of a goalkeeper? Like, it just does feel like it can't continue with Bayern Deer, considering that every single corner kick feels like the opposition are going to score, and yet Onana's still frozen out on the bench a little bit.
So as I understand it, they've started to put the feelers out on Onana to see if there is a good opening for him to go somewhere. It could even be on loan. It will happen once the Sen Lammens deal happens. He's had other teams bidding for him too, but he wants to join Man United.
Is Sen Lammens going to go in and be first choice?
Yeah, he's going to have to be, isn't he? I don't think that was the plan, but I think he's going to be. Like, I guess this is what we're trying to work out. I was figuring out ahead of the Fulham game. I was like, right, I assume Onana's back in goal today. I assume Onana's back in goal at Craven Cottage. And then if he is, then he's there to compete with Lammens for the number 1 spot, and Bayern Deer goes, Tom Heaton hangs around. But as soon as Onana's on the bench again, you're like, well, he's not in the plans then, is he? Like, it's similar to what Amorim did with Højlund, where suddenly he was like, you're not playing. You're just not coming on.
I suppose the difference is you don't often substitute your goalkeeper. Like, there's more of a thing in terms of like Højlund not coming on felt like a statement. Like, actually substituting your goalkeeper would be kind of nuts.
Yeah, I just mean the fact that for the goalkeeper, it's different because if you're not playing, if you're not starting the game, you're not playing. And so to give the nod to Bayindir after a high-profile error, which was seen as in most people's eyes, is baffling, especially as Onana is supposed to be Man United's number one. We know, going back to last season, like, Amorim doesn't really rate him. So it doesn't surprise me that he would like to get rid of him. But isn't Lamens like 21 or something? Like, he's
23.
23, okay. So for a goalkeeper, that's still very young.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're just thinking, like, it can't be any worse than what we've got. But then West Ham thought that about the goalkeeper they signed, and he's been atrocious. So let's see. I mean, yeah, but I have heard that Onana could leave. Maybe West Ham going to sign him.
Who knows? Maybe City should sign him. At least he is good with his feet. Or actually, we haven't seen very much of that at Manchester United. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? All right, we're going to take a break there. When we come back, we're going to round this off by talking a little bit about Chelsea and Liverpool. Don't go anywhere. When we started this podcast, it seemed like we had to figure it all out on our own. Scripts, setup, filming schedule, logos. It was super overwhelming, and every day seemed to introduce a new decision that needed an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Allbirds and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/ranks. Go to shopify.com/ranks. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Confronting high credit card debt can feel scary. But the good news is, if you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, financial relief options are now available. National Debt Relief is currently offering debt relief designed to reduce what you owe, fast-tracking your way to being debt-free. If you qualify for debt relief, you may be able to pay back significantly less than what you owe and save thousands of dollars. Imagine only paying one low monthly program payment you can afford and saving money as you become debt-free. National Debt Relief has already helped bring debt relief to over 550,000 U.S. consumers, earning thousands of five-star reviews and an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. You're stronger than your credit card debt. Take the first step and visit nationaldebtrelief.com to see what debt relief you qualify for. That's nationaldebtrelief.com.
I'm not switching my team to some fancy work platform that somehow knows exactly how we work. And its AI features are literally saving us hours every day. We're big fans. And just like that, teams all around the world are falling for Monday.com. With intuitive design, seamless AI capabilities, and custom workflows, it's the work platform your team will instantly click with. Head to Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Welcome back to the third and final part of today's Ranks FC podcast. Jack Collins and Dean Jones with you. And Dean, two clubs left to discuss. I did originally want to have Aston Villa in here, but my kind of big question was just, are you broken? And that feels kind of like where Villa are at right now with this transfer market. So I don't know how much there is to discuss on them, but there does feel like there will be movement at both Anfield and Stamford Bridge in these last days of the window.
Yeah, obviously, you can kind of call this the luxury shopping section as we round off today's pod, because I'm not sure any of the businesses totally essential. The Liverpool definitely need Isak, for example. They're probably fine without him.
They probably need a centre-back.
But they need a centre-back. So so in that sense, there are some essentials that they still need for their wardrobe. And Mark Gahey would look very nice in a Liverpool shirt, settling in there alongside Van Dijk. They look rocky.
You're a Palace fan, I imagine.
Yeah, unless you're a Palace fan. But I think Palace fans have been kind of expecting this for a while. I'm probably surprised that he's played as much as he has already this season. We've seen how vulnerable Liverpool have been at the start of this campaign, and surely they'll do something about it. Ideally, you'd have thought they'd go for another midfielder, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. So
there's 140 million there in the bank that they want for Alexander Isak. I'd go and sign a centre-back and a centre midfielder and then maybe get a loan signing in terms of the attacking player, because he's got 3 and 3. Like, hey, weirder things have happened.
Yeah, exactly. But Mark Gahey, it's with Gahey, the hold-up, as I understand it, is more just around the price, because his contract's winding down. Palace want like 40 million for him. Liverpool just don't see that they need to spend more than £30 million on him, and they would wait for him. They know Mark Gahey wants to join them. Say they have felt they want to wait for him, like maybe the Newcastle game changes their mind. Like we see people react in the market at this stage and panic a little. Liverpool don't tend to panic, but they do. They're not afraid to go into the market late if they have to, and I think that with Gahey, they probably will. They probably will make an offer. And I think it would be a very wise thing to do. And I think it will give everybody more belief around Anfield that they can actually retain their title if they bring in somebody of the quality and the nature too of Mark Gahey, a very composed lad, somebody who speaks very well, has great Premier League experience now, international experience too, big ambition. I think he ticks a lot of boxes. Obviously, bit of a devastating time for Crystal Palace fans, but unfortunately this is the food chain and you're part of it, and Gahey could well end up making that switch to Anfield. And I mean, Chelsea really is luxury shopping, because if you're going for Garnacho and Xavi Simons at this time, then it's just nonsense really, because you've got Nkunku and Nicholas Jackson, who as a package are at least as good as those two. Possibly better. So, like, if you were to have Nicholas Jackson and Nkunku, the best versions of them, I think they're better than actually Garnacho and Simmons. So that doesn't make any...
I don't necessarily disagree with you. Like, we haven't obviously...
There's not a lot in it anyway, is there? Like,
there's not a lot in it. Like, we obviously haven't seen the best of Christopher Nkunku at Chelsea, right? Almost ever. So I can understand their desire to move him on. The thing that's a little bit confusing with the Nicholas Jackson thing is how quite quick they were to be like, okay, we don't need 3 strikers on the books. And I don't really understand the Garnacho deal. But then again, my feelings about Alejandro Garnacho are...
Well, it's cheap. Garnacho's cheap. If you get Garnacho at £30 million... compared to everybody else that's moved of his type, everyone else of a Garnacho type style goes at like £60 million now. So you're basically getting a Garnacho at half price in that respect. And for Chelsea, that fits the model.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, look, it does look like both Nkunku and Jackson are on the move. Like, I love Xavi Simons, right? Although I'm not 100% sure where the natural spot for a fit for him is in this team. And obviously, after Esteval's hot start in a Chelsea shirt, I think there's a real excitement about him at the moment in the fan base. So giving competition to him is a little bit of a weird one in some ways. But look, I can understand why Chelsea are kind of moving in the market. The one that I thought was wild today was the link to Fermin, which doesn't make huge amounts of sense to me, especially if they're looking at Xavi Simons. If they were to bring him in alongside him, where does he play? Are they thinking about playing him in sort of a deeper role in midfield? That doesn't add up loads to me. But I wonder if that's just a little bit of kind of, again, testing the market for a young player who they might be able to get on a kind of cut price deal because of the situation at his club at the moment. So who knows? Maybe it's just Chelsea kind of poking out those areas and seeing which ones stick. it does look like Jackson's on his way to Bayern Munich, which I quite like, to be honest. I think that's fun. It gives Bayern a different dimension. It gives them a backup striker. It gives them the ability to potentially play wide in different system. I know Nkunku's been linked with Bayern as well, but obviously he's kind of in that conversation there that Leipzig want. That might free up Xavi Simons. He might go to Chelsea. He also might go to Bayern. Who knows? But it does feel like they're in a strange kind of capacity. What I thought was wild was Alejandro Garnacho turning down a move to Bayern because he's so desperate to go to Chelsea. And I get it with the kind of like elements of like, I don't want to go and play in Saudi Arabia right now. Fair enough. Like if you don't want to go and do that, that's totally fine. Like if you want to go and remain in the top 5 leagues in Europe, fair enough. But turning down a move to Bayern because you think that Chelsea is the place for you, when I think that there's no guarantee that he starts for this Chelsea side, I thought was a wild, wild twist in this saga.
Yeah. You never know. That's the unpredictable nature of it all. With Chelsea as well, I'm never going to rule out a surprise. Like maybe they sign Mark Gahey. Maybe they do something outlandish and go for somebody that we haven't expected just because they can. Nobody loves a transfer window.
They can. It is the other point here because of the whole, thing with what Chelsea have managed to do from a sales perspective this summer, right? Like their net spend is less than Wrexham's. And I know that people hate that term net spend, but it does kind of count when you come to the PSR regulations. It gives them room to move and maneuver in the market. And the fact that they're able to sell at such a volume and at such high fees means that they back themselves to bring in players, and therefore when they're talking about them, when they're looking at them, they're like, well, yeah, we might sign him for 30 million. He might not play, but look what we did with Keane and Dewsbury Hall. He played about 15 minutes, and we sold him for the same fee to Everton the next year. Like they back themselves to get players off the books, and there's a few exceptions to this. There's obviously the kind of old guard hanging around who they're going to need to get rid of by the end of this window. Raheem Sterling stands out, I think, from that bunch, but because they've been so successful in moving players on, they have the ability to then work in the market to their want. And look, I don't agree with all of the business that they're doing, and I don't really see why they're signing Alejandro Garnacho. But in terms of what you're saying, they have that space and they have that kind of financial system in place that's allowing them to do this. So it's not, wild in terms of what they're spending. I just find it wild in terms of how do you keep that entire dressing room happy?
Well, you can't. They've never been able to do that. That's been the big problem with it all. You can't keep that many people happy, but they just got to hope that the ones that are happy can go on and win some trophies, and they'll deal with the rest of it as and when. It's worth shouting out to Crystal Palace, by the way, after all the doom and gloom. They are seemingly closing in on Jeremy Pino, so at least they might have something to celebrate and a player with a bit of flair coming in.
Yeah, I really like Jeremy Pino as well. Like he's been excellent for Villarreal. He is more of an out-and-out winger than Eze was, and obviously he's going to be asked to play in that 10, but he does like to cut inside. I think that's a lot of fun, and I'd be excited to see him in a Palace shirt. So yeah, there's some nice links across all of this. And with that, Dean, I think we're probably going to call this a day. So all that's left for me to do, say thank you very much to our transfer guru, Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been the Ranks FC podcast. Thank you so much for listening as ever. We'll be back next week where we'll be looking at our 5x5s and starting to predict the season ahead with a couple of games in the bank to look back at. We'll also be doing some bits and bobs over on Patreon about our favourite signings of the window, some of the deals we think might be absolutely wonderful. There's lots and lots to come here, and the truth is going to be returning at the start of September as well. Doogie and Sam have had a nice summer break, nice for some, and we're also going to be back together, all doing things in one go. Well, that's all the admin, so thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoy these final days of the window where chaos promises to reign. Thank you so much, and we'll see you very shortly, Rank Squad. Take it easy. Peace. When we started this podcast, it seemed like we had to figure it all out on our own. Scripts, setup, filming schedule, logos. It was super overwhelming, and every day seemed to introduce a new decision that needed an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Allbirds and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/ranks. Go to shopify.com/ranks. That's shopify.com/ranks.
If you owe $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or personal loans, help is here. More and more Americans turn to credit cards to get by. National Debt Relief is helping qualified clients reduce what they owe. For many, continuing to struggle making minimum monthly payments could take years to pay off. National Debt Relief has already helped over 550,000 Americans reduce their debt by negotiating directly with their creditors. When you call, you'll be amazed at how much you can save and how quickly you can become debt-free. If you want off the debt treadmill, visit nationaldebtrelief.com today. You don't need to declare bankruptcy, and you may qualify for significant debt relief. To find out what savings you may qualify for, simply visit nationaldebtrelief.com. That's nationaldebtrelief.com.
I'm not switching my team to some fancy work platform that somehow knows exactly how we work. And its AI features are literally saving us hours every day. We're big fans. And just like that, teams all around the world are falling for Monday.com. With intuitive design, seamless AI capabilities, and custom workflows, it's the work platform your team will instantly click with. Head to Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.